Hey, Ron. Good morning. Just curious, if Alex's calf tightens up, I guess, or gets worse, as he kind of admitted over the course of a game, what are some of the things that you guys can do to, I guess, mitigate that? Maybe take some pressure off. Is there anything schematically that you're willing to discuss that you might be able to help him with?
Well, there are some things you can, and again, those are some of the things that we did do this past week. And honestly, the thing that we have to be willing to do, and we have to really think about is whether or not to rotate him in and out with Taylor. I mean, we have to definitely look at that. It's, I mean, there's nothing you can do. But I mean, that's the truth of the matter. We're going to play a very aggressive defense this week. And, obviously it's something we most certainly have to look at.
Good morning.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Good morning. I wanted to go back to something you referenced yesterday. You mentioned the idea of David versus Goliath. I won't ask you about the game film from that one, but I did want to touch on that idea of the team that's the big underdog in the playoffs, the sub 500 record. You've been in that position before. You touched on that a bit yesterday, but one thing I wanted to ask you about was the idea of belief and how much a coach's job is to instill that belief. If that's just an element you do need to address, and maybe you did in 2014 with your team in this similar situation. And I'm wondering whether back then, having had the example to point to in recent years of Seattle having won its wild card game as a team under 500, if that was something you pointed to, and if that helped, having had an example like that.
Oh, most certainly. I mean, again, and I said it yesterday, I'm not apologizing for getting in with a sub 500 record, because at the end of the day, we want our division. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's a matter of getting into it. Now, if people don't think you have an opportunity, people don't think you have a chance, great. But it's my job to make sure our players believe we have an opportunity, we have a chance. And that's the thing that, I want our guys to understand. We're here, by our good graces, about the things that we did to put ourselves in position. I mean, with Alex as our starting quarterback, we've won 5 in a row. And that's something to point to. That's something to say, look at what we've done. And we also point to the fact that we played and we're fortunate enough to beat Pittsburgh, so let's look at all the things that we've done and accomplished, and point to that. And that's what I'm going to do. I mean, that's what I do as a head coach. I have to instill that kind of belief, that kind of trust, that kind of understanding. If I'm not successful at doing it, I'm not going to be here very long. Trust me, I get that part of it, about being a head coach in the NFL. My job is to do exactly that. And that's what I intend to do with our team, is to get them to understand and truly believe in the things that we're trying to get accomplished here as a football team, as an organization.
Do you know whether your players know about what happened with Carolina in 2014? Other than
I hope they have, because I've talked about it, and I hope some of them know the recent history. It's because it's an important thing, because again, and you hear it over and over and over and over again. You just have to get in, and I think Pittsburgh was the last team to win a Super Bowl as a wild card team as well. And they're a team that barely got in, but yet they went through it and they won it all. So, to me, there's a lot of examples to point at and say, you don't have to be the number 1 seed to win the Super Bowl. You just have to be in the tournament. And that's where we are. We are in the tournament, and now it's a matter of us going out, doing our job, playing to the best of our abilities, and maybe getting lucky. Maybe we catch Tampa on a bad day. Maybe we catch Tom Brady on a bad day. But we have to, do our job still. We have to play. We can't hope, somebody else does our job. We have to do our job.
Thank you.
I don't think Sam's on. Nikki, you could take his question.
Hi, Ron. This is from Sam. About Tom Brady, he was wondering if, you got a lot of young defenders who grew up watching him. And I know there was that clip of Chase when he went up to Big Ben and was kind of in admiration of him. Do you talk to your young guys about it? Do you like the fact that they grew up admiring him and
Yeah.
go?
I think that's cool, Nikki, because the reason being is that just tells you, they want to emulate those guys. They want to be like those guys, and who wouldn't want to be like Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger, because those guys are champions. They've been champions, and so you see guys like that. You say, man, what makes those guys special? And that's what's cool about it. I mean, believe me, I get a little bit of fanboy in me too. I do. There's certain guys I do get excited about meeting. There's certain guys I said, wow, I mean, to me, Joe Montana was one of those really cool, iconic players. And even the guy I played against and coached, Brett Favre. I mean, there's some guys that are just over the top as far as iconic to me. And I've always thought that was cool. That I either got to play with those guys or I played against those guys. And now some of these guys I've coached against, and I've coached a lot of great linebackers, but getting to meet Ray Lewis, I thought was really cool. And I was a coach at the time. So I think there's something to be said about that. And to me, that shot of Chase going over and shaking Ben's hand during warmups, that I thought was really cool because I saw it happen. I mean, because Chase had come up to me and he goes, man, I want to get after Ben. I want to get Ben. And I said, hey, don't worry, you'll get your chances during the game. He said, no, now. So he ran over and introduced himself. I mean, that, just tells me how much he loves the game of football. And I think that's really cool. I really do, because as I said yesterday, I want guys that love playing professional football on our side. I really do. And he's one of those guys. And we're fortunate that we have a whole bunch of those kind of guys.
Planning on rotating quarterbacks is obviously a very rare thing, and maybe it's unheard of in the postseason. What would you like about sort of the flexibility that could give you? And then maybe what sort of difficulties would that put on your team and on the offense specifically, if you had to go that route?
Just so you know, I didn't say I was going to do it. I said maybe it's something we need to think about, but I wouldn't worry about it because our game plan is what our game plan is, and that's what it's been. That's the biggest thing, is that going into a game, you have one game plan. Now, you may call certain things a few more times for a different quarterback as opposed to a specific quarterback. That might be one thing you do, but to have two separate game plans, you're asking for way too much of your team. And that's why it's important to have, in my opinion, to have quarterbacks that know your system, understand your system, been part of your system. And that's why we brought Taylor in a few weeks back, because here's a guy that had been in the system a few times. So that was one of the benefits about having Taylor Heineke around.
When it comes to Alex's calf, is this something that can get better, or do you think it's where it is at this point in the season?
Oh, now you're asking for a doctor thing. I couldn't tell you. I believe me, if there's one thing I've learned is you don't want to make certain comments about players' health and what it means. I really couldn't tell you. I really couldn't.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, when evaluating whether you guys would even consider rotating, are there other teams or other games you can look at to see whether it's been done successfully? Like, where do you even draw from when thinking of stuff like that?
And again, like I said, guys, it's just something that came up today. I mean, I couldn't tell you whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it. I couldn't tell you if there's value to doing it or if somebody's done it successfully. I just know this, we'll address it when it happens.
And then unrelated to that, but with Tom Brady, he's 43 years old. Just what are you seeing from him in terms of how he's performing even at his age?
I don't know if you can. I mean, I didn't realize he was 43 because I tell you what, he throws the ball like he's 23. He really does. He's he's got the arm strength. He delivers a good ball. He's still who he is, and that's the scary part. Is he may be that age, but he sure doesn't play like it. I know he's when you watch him. I know he spreads it around too. That's the other thing, because you can't sit there and say, oh, he's going to throw to Gronk or he's going to throw to Mike or he's going to throw to Brown. I mean, he's going to do what he does, based on what he sees and his years of experience.
Hey, Ron, I know you say you're not necessarily doing, you're just considering it, but what would be the things that would take you down that path? What would you not see from Alex that would lead you to go that direction?
Well, I just know this, guys, as we go through the game and we get into certain situations or circumstances, we may have to consider something like that. I can't get here and tell you what it would be or wouldn't be. It's going to have to be something that comes up in the moment of the game.
And how did you feel that Alex's movement was against the Eagles?
Well, I thought he had his moments. That first drive was what we were looking for. I will tell you the drive just before halftime was excellent. And there are a couple things that happened, unfortunately, that you said, oh man, wish he could have stepped away from that. But again, as long as he's performing and doing the things that he needs to help us, we'll keep rolling.
Thank
you. Hey, Ron. Obviously over the course of the season, you're game planning for the opponent, but probably only to some degree, because it's 1 of 16, you got to worry about yourself showing too much, whatever it may be. But now that it's this, situation, the chess match gets heightened. And I'm just wondering, having gone through this as a coach, how much you enjoy this particular aspect, putting your coaching staff essentially against another one to try to figure out advantages.
I think it's cool. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's funny because I know there have been a lot of things that that we've talked about adding or allowing coaches to do on the sideline, and I've advocated against a lot of those things. I love the chess match, and I think it's important. I think the chess match is one of those things that you definitely match up against one another. You work all week to see how you can handle things, how you can do things, how you can attack them, and then all of a sudden they come out and do something different. How quickly do you adjust? Do you make good adjustments at halftime? That I think is important. I really do, and I've been one of those guys that has advocated against certain things on the sidelines, like the video. I mean, I like the fact that you can look at the pictures, and you can use the tablets to look at the pictures. I'm not one of those that's for the actual video on the tablets. I'm against that, because to me, this is why we work. This is why we spend those ungodly hours. These what these coaches have done in terms of preparing for the game, and then now you've got to see exactly just how good you are, in calling plays and adjusting plays, and then something happens and you come to the sideline and you make those corrections, and then you go in at halftime and you make more corrections, and then you come into the second half. I think that's cool. That to me is what coaching is about. Not just about training your players, developing your players as football players and young men, but it's also about the strategies, the game planning, and the adjustments that you have to make. I think that I think is the essence of coaching, is mentoring and strategizing. I like I said, I've always struggled when they add extra layers that supposedly help us on the sidelines, because to me, when you start doing that, you're helping the lesser to have a chance to correct and make adjustments. No, if you haven't prepared, if you haven't developed yourself as a strategist, you should get beat. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
Is there a specific moment from back either when your coordinator days or Carolina days that you remember sort of that, wow, this was so cool, that maybe either was during the week or at the game that you thought of and you guys were able to execute?
Yeah, there are. I mean, you sit there and you come to the sideline and you see something like a formation you hadn't seen before, and you see them run this play off of it, and you tell them, hey, they got to come back to this. But when you see this formation, you have to expect this. You have to anticipate this. And then to have them do that, and all of a sudden your guy makes a play, comes to the sideline and says, I saw it. And that's why, and you just know. And so that's the things that as a signal caller, as a coach, that it makes it all worth it, because you've prepared, you've seen it, the guys have handled it, and they've done a great job with it, and you win. That's the benefit of it. And as I said, that's why, we're here. That's what we're supposed to do. To me, when you start adding on layers and saying, oh, this is to help you, well, then you can really hire anybody.
Thank you.
JP. JP's not on. We go to left.
Hey, I'm here. Sorry, Sean. Ron, Jason Pierre-Paul's had a ton of success against Washington, but much of that came when he was with the Giants. Is that the kind of thing? Does that carryover happen for certain players against certain teams?
Who did you say?
Pierre-Paul. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, first of all, you got to remember how many snaps has he played against this organization when he was in the Giants? Remember, they play him twice a year, and they play him every year. So what was he there? 7 years, right? So
yeah,
so he's going to play against this team 14 times. You know, it's like we had a player that we brought to Carolina, and he's the one guy that sacked Cam Newton more than anybody else. Well, crap, we played against them every year. You know, so that's going to happen. Those are going to throw those numbers out. But the reason Pierre-Paul makes plays is because he's a good football player. He really is. And he's in a good system right now that really does feature his abilities. He's got some really, dynamic teammates around him. I mean, it's going to be a good matchup for us. It's going to be a good test for us. Now, go ahead.
And then just talking about that Bucs defensive line, they finished the regular season 1 sack ahead of you guys, 5th in the league in sacks. Does that give you a little bit more pause or more things to consider when making this QB decision this week?
No. I think the thing at the end of the day that we have to do is we have to play the guy that gives us the best chance to win.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron. I was curious about what Jack Del Rio has brought to this defense. Is it just his temperament, his personality? Is it the scheme? I mean, where has that influence been with him?
I think the thing about Jack, really, first of all, is when he walks into the room, he has instant credibility, at least in my opinion. If you know who he is and you know the history of his career as a player and as a coach, to me, he has instant credibility. That, I think, helps a guy right off the bat. It doesn't mean he's going to be a better coach than anybody, but I think it gives a leg up on a lot of people. Okay. Secondly, then the scheme. And you have to understand what we're trying to do on defense to buy into the system and understand we're asking you to do this specifically because we believe this puts you in the best position specifically to make plays. And so I think that's very helpful. So again, a little bit about him, who his background is, then what he does schematically, and then the way he demands and works with and talks to and handles the players. I think he does a great job with that. He really does. And I think also the way he leads his assistant coaches. I think that's another plus that you have to have, is you've got to have some sort of relationship, and that relationship has to be viewed by the players as a positive one with your assistant coaches. So I think, there's a whole package to that, Les, that you have to have and you have to show and you have to exhibit in front of the players. He makes no apologies for who he is. I know early on there was a big brouhaha about his tweets, but that's who he is. I mean, and he's not going to change who he is. And I think the thing that people have to understand is he's true to his beliefs, and that I think is important because I appreciate that. I really do.
I mean, were you guys philosophically, I'm not talking about Twitter, but I mean, just, as old Pac-8, Pac-10 linebackers or hard hitters. And I mean, philosophically, did that carry over? Are you guys schematically similar? Or did that take, we have to kind of figure that out between us and come up with something? First
of all, it was Pac-10. We're not that old to be Pac-8. Okay. Secondly, we did line up philosophically very well, very, very well. When I sat down and visited with him, the one thing I really appreciated was everything he said, I agreed with. Everything he said, I believed in. And that made it very simple for me. It really did. And I will say this too, because of my situation this year, I really had to take a step away from meddling, whether it be with Jack or Scott or Nate, because I couldn't be in those meetings like I typically have been in the past. And it's still hard for me to have the kind of time that you need to be able to focus in and get involved. I've really managed a lot that I've done this year, as opposed to getting in and getting involved with the play calling. There are some things that I'll see, I'll call out during the game and make a suggestion. But the truth of the matter is what Jack and Scott and Nate have done this year, I couldn't ask for any more. Those guys have been excellent. And a lot of it starts with the fact that their beliefs line up with mine. And it was easy for me to step away and tell them, hey, I'm not going to meddle because I'm not able to be there all the time and be involved like I normally have been in the previous 9 years as a head coach. That made it easy for me. And I was able to really pass it on to those guys to do their thing. And they did a hell of a job. They really did it. And my hat's off to those guys.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Ron, these are my questions. I swear I'm not double dipping. You mentioned yesterday that you did some research a couple of years ago on the importance of the interior rush of a defensive line and how that affects the edge rush. Could you expand on that a little bit? I'm just curious what you gleaned from that.
I think the biggest thing, in terms of when you go back and you look at, how we had success, how have I been involved with successful things? One of the things that stood out to me was the pressure and the takeaways. I'm a big believer in takeaways. When I was at Carolina, at my last stop, when we won the takeaway battle, we won over 90% of our games. And that was one of the things that we constantly pushed. When we had multiple sacks in a game, we won like 80. I can't remember the number exactly, but we won many more games than we lost. So you go back and you say, okay, where did these things occur? Well, the years that we had a lot of interceptions occurred congruently with years that we had a lot of sacks. So then took a look at, okay, where did these sacks, how are they generated? What created those things? And then found the inside push, the interior push was very important. And when you couple those with guys that can come off the edge and the quarterback can't step up, it creates something. And that's the biggest thing I learned was that when you had a successful interior rush, it meant a lot of good things for the rest of your team, whether it's getting sacks, whether it's creating takeaways, creating interceptions. Those things go hand in hand as far as being successful. And a lot of it pointed, Nikki, to the interior rush guys. And we go back and look at the guys that we had during that run, we were successful because of those guys, because of having a K1 Short, having a Star Lutulele, pushing inside so the quarterbacks couldn't step up. And a lot of that was survival, because if we couldn't get pressure, on Drew, when we were going up against New Orleans, man, they were going to kill us. They were going to pick us apart. So we had to get pressure inside on him. And it was the same thing. We had to get pressure on Ryan, when we played Atlanta. And where was that pressure coming from? Coming from the inside. And so those things were important.
And lastly, I know the focus is on the game this week, obviously, but I believe the window for negotiating something, a new deal with Brandon Sheriff opened. Is that something that's in the works or will be in the works?
Again, I'm not going to get to personnel and all that kind of stuff until we are, out, and hopefully that's not for a while.
Okay. Thanks.
Time for three more. Ree, Heather, and Darren.
Ron, kind of following up on Nikki's question, and not necessarily specific to Brandon Sheriff, but obviously you guys signed Chase Roullier to an extension on Saturday, which means that 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line are now signed at least through 2022. I know you won't talk about the personnel decision-making, but how much easier does it make it when you have that kind of setup where literally you only have your one big fish kind of left on the roster, and you can, I guess, how can you better allocate your time and energy to getting that deal done?
See, and the point being exactly what you said is when you have the majority of the guys under contract and you're in a good situation, I think that bodes well for you going into it. And those will be things that we're obviously going to be looking at and discussing. Obviously, again, once we get done, once we're done, but it does make it easier. It puts us in a good position as far as going forward into free agency and the draft. you have to take a look at those things, and you have to be prepared one way or the other. But it does allow for a situation to be positive in favor of putting your guys back together.
And then really quick follow-up to that is I had asked you about possibly being some competition on the right-hand side of the line because we knew the left was a lot of open spaces and you identified the right as a place you really liked. I guess now looking back on it and now having seen the, Chase Roulier, Brandon Sheriff, and Morgan Moses trio playing together, what is it that stood out about the three of them? Why do you like that combination in particular, having seen them in games?
Well, the last couple of years they've worked together, and you see them getting that feel and that development for working with one another in a game and understanding, and just knowing and trusting, that that those guys can communicate without really having to say things. That they've worked well enough together to know and understand how they can protect one another during a game, and it's interesting because the more we see the rest of the line together, Wes Schweitzer and Cornelius Lucas work together, the more solid it becomes, and those are things that you feel good about going forward with that group.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
All right, Ree.
Hey, Ron, I know you're focused on your team, but I mean, as you look at Brady and going back to the Brady discussion, were you surprised when he did leave New England, and kind of what have you seen from maybe the start to the finish, if you've been following along as his new journey with the Bucs is gone?
Well, first of all, I really was surprised that he did leave. I was one of those that didn't think he would. But now seeing him where he is and the comfort and confidence level he's getting with his team around him, it's pretty impressive. It really is. And again, but that's what happens. That's what is created by winning. And as they've won and gotten some momentum going forward, it's been impressive to watch. It really has. And, that's what we're working towards. That's what we're striving for, is to have that kind of continuity, have that kind of success, and build that kind of confidence. And as I said earlier, if you think about, what's happened for us the last 5 times Alex has started for us, we've won. And the thing is, you see the guys play with that kind of confidence and that kind of comfort level with each other on the field. And that's what you want to create, is that consistency, that confidence, and that swagger. And you see that, you watch that from their football team right now. And I think obviously a lot of it does have to do with who Tom Brady is on the football field, because it creates a positive situation for their team.
Darren, last one.
Hey, Ron. So your game's going to feature the first playoff game to have female coaches on both sidelines. And of course, with Jennifer King, she's actually going to be the first African-American woman to coach a playoff game. What kind of impact do you feel like that's going to have on young girls in this world and even people of color?
Well, first of all, I think it's going to tell, those young girls that are watching that you can. Yes, you can. You can coach in the NFL, and I think that's really cool. Just because this game is a tremendous game, and it should be open to everybody in terms of opportunities to play, or opportunities to coach, or opportunities to lead the organization. And I think that's an important message that the league is putting out there. I think it really is. Secondly, Jennifer being somebody of color, it just happens to me that she's of color. I would have hired her whether she was or wasn't of color. I hired her because she's worked hard at it and she's earned it. She volunteered and was around and didn't get paid a dime at one point. She just wanted to be there because she loved the game and she had something to offer. And I think that's the message that we're trying to get out there, because she has handled herself professionally, the way you need to handle yourself to set the example. And I think it's important. I really do. And what was really neat, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but on Sunday night, I think it was the second time, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was the second time we had a refereeing crew of all color. And I thought that was really a neat thing, that nobody made a big deal about it, because at the end of the day, that's what it should be. It should be, we had a good referee crew that was out there that handled the game the way it needed to be handled. And oh, by the way, these all happen to be African-American. that I think is where we need to get to as a league, as a country, as a world. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your makeup is. It's just that you've earned the right to be there. That to me was really cool because I thought about it as the game was happening, that nobody made an issue of it, and that was really cool.